From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. This is your podcast about consumption and consumption of things like media, beer, food, and so on. This week we're going to be taking a look at a much bigger movie. Last week we did a B movie, but this time we have a blockbuster that we're going to talk about. We'll come back to that in a minute, though. With me today, of course, is Sean from Draft Therapy. How are you doing today?
You didn't introduce me as your comrade today.
You're right, I didn't. One of these days I'll get it right. This is only the second episode. We'll figure that out. So
We'll get all the kinks out.
right.
Comrade, cohort, whatever. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been kind of a boring week, but can't complain.
Well, we're just coming off the weekend. What did you have? What did you have going on?
So we have someone remodeling our bathroom. So I've basically been sitting here watching money get thrown down the drain in my house. I'll get a bathroom out of it, but it is expensive.
Is
I
it
made about, what's that?
is it going down the drain literally?
Some of it. So I made about 5 trips to Menards back and forth just because, apparently when I get told to get something, it can't be right the first time. I have to go back and get something else or add to it, all that fun stuff.
I'm familiar.
The joys of home ownership, right?
Yeah, exactly. Is that what it is? Is it a joy?
Well, I'm not doing it, so that helps. I'm just throwing money at it because I don't know. I don't screw around with plumbing or electrical. I need an adult for that type of stuff.
Yeah.
How about you? What have you been up to?
Watch a couple movies. I watched Licorice Pizza, which is by
Oh, yeah?
Paul Thomas Anderson. Is it Paul Thomas? I always get him. Now I'm second guessing myself. It's not Mila
Pretty sure it's
Jovovich's husband. It's the guy that makes the good movies.
The Rushmore guy.
That's Wes Anderson.
Oh, Wes. Okay, I don't know who I'm. Punch Drunk Love guy.
Yeah, we're really bad.
Maybe.
We're really bad at this. We should just not even publish this podcast.
Yeah.
The guy that
That's
did
bad.
the what's this? Now I'm drawing a total blank. The dude that did the Marky Mark movie, the porn movie.
Magic Mike.
No, the 70s movie about the porno.
Oh, Boogie Nights.
Yeah, geez, man. Seriously, we should probably cut all that.
No, I think we should leave it because that is. That's kind of off topic anyway. That's not usually where we go on this.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I watched that. I watched Moon Knight. I started watching
Okay.
that on Disney Plus, and I went to Bearded Lamb Brewing Company in Plymouth, which used to be Liberty Street. So yeah, I had a pretty packed weekend.
I started. So I found out that apparently we have Paramount Plus. I didn't know that until Saturday while I was sitting around waiting on the contractor. After we talked about it last week, I started rewatching all the old Jackass episodes because they're on there, which was mildly entertaining. I like that in addition to the don't try this at home warning, they all have a warning before that says warning, this was shot at a time with different social norms, like basically saying please don't try to sue us or cancel us or anything like that. I thought that's kind of funny. And watching it, maybe it's because I'm the wrong demographic. I'm like, this isn't that bad. I haven't caught, aside from the occasional Confederate flag speedo, I haven't seen anything too outdated in comparison to what's going on right now.
Yeah, not too much, not too objectionable comparatively to everything else that you have to watch your back on saying or doing.
Oh, this is the show that I've been watching. This was on, I think this was on Sunday night primetime TV, if I remember right. So it's not like it was going to have, uncensored dick and balls running around the whole time anyway.
It is cable TV.
That's what the movie's for.
That's true.
So,
TV doesn't have the same standard as regular broadcast TV.
It's disappointing.
Yeah. So what are we going to be talking about today, John?
So we are going to talk today about the movie Matrix Resurrections, or Matrix 4, if you're keeping count. This movie came out, I think it was Christmas Day last year that it came out. It launched on HBO Max and in theaters. I was, in retrospect, extremely glad that it launched on HBO Max. But, for those who, The Matrix was a series that really kind of was genre bending and genre redefining in a lot of ways. I know when I saw the original one, I was still working in a movie theater when the original came out. So I must have seen that one in probably 10 times because wasn't paying for it. But I remember being just totally blown away and drawn into this weird sci-fi world that we got in that original movie. And then the sequels came out, and no one's going to tell you that the sequels were as good as the original. They're just not. The sequels though, 2 and 3 at least had two, especially like I like two a lot because it had a lot of weird. Two had the weird thing where it's like all of a sudden Neo's fighting vampires and Neo's fighting werewolves and weird stuff like that, and even though they don't really show them as werewolves per se, that highway chase scene that's in the second movie, I can watch that pretty much when, like, visually that's just a really entertaining sequence to watch, and it kind of goes back to that style of filmmaking I like, where you find out like they actually built, like, I think they said a 10-mile stretch of highway, something like that, to be
Yeah, I
able to
remember
shoot
seeing
all
the
that.
seeing the specials on HBO or whatever, and them showing that. To put it in context, the first Matrix movie came out at a time. It was like one of the first movies that I, for lack of a better term, basically pirated and watched on like a VCD. If you're familiar with what a
Mhm.
VCD is, I watched it on VCD like several times. We talked about all the people I worked with a bunch of young guys in a warehouse. That's all we talked about for like a month. It wasn't online, was online, but it wasn't like it is now. You didn't get in a forum or get on some chat group or get on Reddit and talk to people about a movie. You talked about these stuff to the people that you worked with or that you hung out with, and we incessantly talked about it. And I saw the next two. My girlfriend at the time, was my wife now, we went and saw screeners, and it's my favorite memory of seeing a movie with her and a couple friends, the same couple friends for each different sequel. So it's got a long storied kind of history. I don't know what your opinion is on the sequels, 2 and 3 overall.
Actually, so I'm contrarian in this, that I actually like the sequels overall. I think two is for the most part a good movie, but you had to kind of watch two knowing that you're only getting half the story. So when you go into it knowing that there was and I remember at the time that was a big deal that they shot both the movies at the same time. Knowing that you only got half the story going into two, that kind of made me forgive a lot, I guess. With three, I like a lot of the pseudo philosophy that they try to jam into. Like the story part of three, I thought was pretty well done. I watched three sometime within the last year. I don't remember when, but relatively recently. And three is the one where, and again, take this for what it's worth because at the time it was a whole different ball game, but the effects in three look really, really dated by today's standards, to the point where it almost takes you out of what's going on in the movie, especially if you watch three is the one that has the big like Agent Smith fight scene in it, if I remember right.
Yeah, I was just trying to think the Burly Brawl, like if that's 2 or 3, but yeah, I've watched that. I watched that, maybe I'd say 5 years after that, and it looks awful.
Oh yeah, especially if you put it on a big 4K TV and all that. Now it, like I said, I don't remember. I remember when I saw that in a theater. I don't remember thinking it looked bad. I thought maybe I was just so like into it at the time that I didn't care. But looking back on it now, that scene in particular, it really does kind of pull you out of the movie a little bit. It did not age well. So they wrapped everything up pretty good with the first three, and I can't honestly say I was expecting, like, after watching this I can think of about 10 to 15 better ways they could have made another Matrix movie, which maybe we'll come back to that later, but I was not expecting another sequel from that story. I'm not 100% sure that we got another sequel. Like, I've watched this movie twice now. I'm going to kind of just start rolling into some of my points here with it.
Yeah, let's just mention before, this is, if you have not seen it, we are going to talk about the movie. Like, we're going to tell you
Oh
stuff
yeah.
that happens. If you have not seen it and you want to see it, or you're serious, like it's like, something that you feel like you need to see before you listen to this, don't listen to this, because we're going to ruin the entire movie.
Yeah, this is very spoiler heavy. This is definitely not like the last movie we talked about that was over 30 years old, where you had plenty of time to see it. This one, you might not have caught it yet. But anyway, I mean, the concept of this movie, I mean, I honestly feel like the concept of this movie is what happened in real life with this movie. So essentially, Neo is back in the Matrix, and I don't remember how he ended up back in the Matrix to begin with, but whatever. He's back in the Matrix, and he's a video game designer, and he designed a blockbuster game called The Matrix. Okay. So the concept is for his, I guess the concept for this movie, because it's weird to say because this really doesn't affect more than the first act of the movie, is that Neo is being forced to make a Matrix 4 video game. They say specifically he's being told by Warner Brothers, we're going to do this with or without.
It's very meta.
It's one way to put it. And it's almost to the point where you're like, is this what how this actually happened? Like, did they just say, like actually write down, we're going to say that you told us that we have to make this, and we're even going to throw the name Warner Brothers in there. So that happens. That's kind of the starting point for this story, and from there it kind of starts taking off and feeling almost like a reboot of the original movie, because there are so many scenes in this movie. I don't want to go as far to say that they're a complete shot for shot remake, but there are scenes where it's like they're literally playing the first movie on like a screen within the screen.
Yeah, and there's even shots in this movie that are recreated so that new characters that they introduce, can watch the same scene. I mean, it fits in the movie, but they're literally watching a reshot scene. The same action happens the same way, which I understand why they do it, but it gives a different perspective so these other characters can watch it. And like you said, there are literal scenes where they're, the whole like parts of the original movies are being played with characters that are recast as characters that were in the original movie, and they're in the same scenes.
Right. And that's where it really starts getting weird, is when you start seeing some of the recasted characters, because I have a lot of talking points here about characters in this movie. One of the things I don't get with this, like, obviously this movie is supposed to focus around Neo, but is it? Because I kind of feel like Trinity's the one that they really focus on. But my problem with Neo in this movie, I kind of want to go over the characters and go back around to what I think the story was, because it's not very clear at it. And with Neo in this movie, Neo went from being God essentially in the last movies, and he kind of sucks in this movie. Like, he doesn't really do anything. He kind of just walks around being in schlubby and mumbly, and he's acting like Keanu Reeves. That's, I guess, what he's going to do. But he just kind of walks around being disheveled and pissy. And when he's not doing that, he's just using force push and like throwing everything that's even a remote threat away from him. Like, that's the only thing that he's figured out how to do in this Matrix. Your other legacy characters you have a new Smith and you have a new Morpheus. Neither of which for me really hit, which sucks because both of them are great actors. I know Smith was in Mindhunter on Netflix, which he's great on that. He's one of the lead detectives on that, and he's a fantastic actor on that. But on this, both him and Morpheus are guilty of this, but it just feels like he's doing a Hugo Weaving impersonation for when he's in the movie. When he's going through this movie and interacting with Neo, it feels like they just kind of shoehorned him in there to be able to flash some clips of Hugo on the screen, because it never really feels like he's doing anything to endanger Neo or progress the story. He even has a fight with him where it's like literally a shot for shot remake of their subway fight from the first movie.
And this is Jonathan Groff, just to mention this. I mean, he's been in several things, like you said, Mindhunter, he was great in. I mean, this guy was in Frozen, he
Right.
was Kristoff in Frozen. So yeah, he just to kind of make a point about him, he's supposed to be playing Agent Smith, or he's playing Smith, because they don't really call him Agent Smith until later. He doesn't strike me as an intimidating person. Whereas Hugo Weaving was like, he could instill the fear of God into you with a look, the way that he played Agent Smith. Jonathan Groff does not possess this.
I wouldn't go as far as say he doesn't possess it, but he doesn't harness it in this movie at all. The other thing about Hugo Weaving is he had this like kind of cool curiosity about him where, they always say the best villains are the ones you can kind of understand their motives and kind of, I don't want to necessarily say get behind them, but get why they're doing what they're doing. And you got that from Agent Smith in the first three movies. Like, his motives all made sense. They played to the bigger picture of the role and to the bigger picture of the story. And I didn't get that with Smith at all. And he keeps calling Neo Tom, which got annoying to me too for some reason.
Well, he refers to him as the character that he is in the Matrix.
Right.
But I mean, right. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't work for me.
Then the other big recast in this movie that, again, good actor, and I can't remember his name, it's Yaya something, is Morpheus. And this doesn't land for me. It feels like he's doing an impersonation of Lawrence Fishburne through the whole movie. It doesn't really affect anything. I never really understood why we need to pull Neo out of the Matrix in the first place. I mean, we go into the cave world of
we call it Io, if that's what you mean.
Oh, they call it Io now?
Yeah, the civilization that they're in.
Yeah. I didn't get the impression that they were under some imminent threat, like, of the machines. They're buddies with half the machines now.
Yeah.
So I don't really get why Morpheus had to pull Neo out in the first place. They never really build a relationship between Neo and Morpheus to explain why Neo is trusting Morpheus to change up and try to leave the Matrix and get out into the real world. And I don't know. There's so much about how his character's executed that just feels really, I guess, high school drama project to me. So,
well, the thing that I found was interesting was that, Yahya Abdul Mateen II.
thank you.
Yeah. He I looked it up. Is playing Morpheus, but there's a scene with another character with Neo in the real world where him and another character, there's a statue of Morpheus. That's Lawrence Fishburne. Well, he's died, right? He was
Right.
the leader of this city for however long after the events of the Matrix, the third Matrix movie. I don't understand why he needs to be brought back. He is at first introduced to you as an agent, like he's a program basically running in the
Right.
Matrix. But he's working with the machines, and then he comes back. Then they flip him via Bugs, which is a new character.
Yeah, so they flip him, but even when they flip him, you find out he's a like robot in the real world or the blue pill world. When they get there, he's some kind of cybernetic. It's basically like a T-1000, but smaller pieces in the real world, which is also bizarre. So yeah, Bugs is one of the new characters. She's actually one of the few likable characters in this. I wonder if that's because she's attractive and she fights a bunch of people in it, or fights a few people in it. Because the second time I watched this, I was like, I mean, I like her, but she's really not doing anything, other than throwing people through mirrors. Oh yeah, they don't exit through phones now; they exit through mirrors now. Which,
Yep.
So she's fine, but her character doesn't really give a whole lot of anything in the story other than being a binder to take Neo from point A to Blue Pill World. It's what we can call it from this point on. I mean, does she really give anything else in the story other than that?
No, she kind of directs. She's like the I don't know, the avatar or the waypoint to push Neo, where he needs to go, or the rest of the characters basically where they need to go. That's how I feel. Like, hey, by the way, we can do this. You need to do this, like, to kind of keep the story moving. She's the one that observes the anomaly in the program, that sees the shot for shot recreation of Trinity fighting the SWAT team at the beginning of the movie. She's wondering why there's like this interruption in the Matrix, or what, some anomaly in the Matrix. And that's when she's the one that flips Morpheus from an agent to working with the Resistance, I guess.
The next character I have on here is Merovingian, who shows up out of nowhere looking like he spent the last 20 years in Jumanji. Basically picks a meaningless fight. Like the entire sequence, like they bring back the vampires and they bring back the wolf people or whatever.
Excuse me, John. They're called exiles.
They're called anomalies or something like that. Or were they exiles in that?
Yeah. In this one, they're called exiles.
Basically, they all meet up in like a shack and have the most meaningless fight for no real reason, just for him to leave and say, I'm going back to Jumanji, and pieces out. This movie, if I remember right, it's about 2.5 hours long. And
yeah, it's definitely 2.5 hours.
This sequence is like 15 minutes of total needless. Like, I'm fine with needless violence in a movie, but this is not how I want to see it. You got Niobe coming back, which, again, why does this character need to come back? And if you're going to bring her back, like, she sucks, and you've turned her from a radical, like, rebel and a badass into this, like, pissy bureaucrat that makes strawberries.
Yeah, Jada Pinkett Smith is Niobe, and I'm not a big Jada Pinkett Smith fan, regardless of what's going on in real life outside of this podcast and movies. I've never been a big fan of hers. I don't think she's a great actress, and I didn't like her in the Matrix movies before. So she comes back and she's awful. She's like a crappy bureaucrat that just oh, well, okay, whatever. I'll flip, and I don't want you to do what you want to do, but whatever. You really want to do it, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't really feel like she added much to the she was primarily in the second movie, and she had a little bit of a role in the third movie. I didn't think she really added much in that either, but I mean, again, she was in them, so if you insist on bringing back characters, at least you got the original actor, I guess, or actress. But she doesn't add anything to this other than a point of contention.
And we should add, this movie is supposed to take place 60 years after the third movie. So she's got aging makeup on, and she looks in her 80s, or whatever.
She kind of looks like Hoggle from Labyrinth.
I think I won't get into it. If I don't have anything nice to say, I won't say it at all.
Kind of interested to hear what you have to say now.
Well, I mean, just she looks really bad. Like the
Yeah.
makeup looks, she doesn't look anything in person like, or it, without the makeup, she doesn't look like she looked in the second movie, just because of the
Mm.
surgery, like all the plastic surgery and whatnot. And when they add the makeup to make her look older, she doesn't look like a convincing. She just looks like a weird person. Like she doesn't look like an 80-year-old person or a 90-year-old person. She just looks like a weird person.
So we're gonna put a pin on the effects because that's a big gripe I have with this movie, and I still got 2 more characters to hit and check off here. So you got 2 big characters left. I mean, there's other people running around, but not really that make any real impression on you. You got Trinity. Big question with this movie is Trinity the one now, or is Trinity just another one? Or it's not really explained in the movie either way, but it definitely seems like that's kind of what they're trying to push towards is, no, Neo's not really the one. Trinity's the one. Neo just kind of hangs out with her and force pushes stuff. It's kind of what I got out of it. I don't really like Neo. I don't really have any explanation why we needed to pull Trinity into this movie, though. Again, both their characters, and there's more to say about them in a second here. It's like their story arc, but neither one of them really affects what. There's no threat in this movie for either one of them to really have to go after, except for arguably Neil Patrick Harris, who plays the analyst in this movie, which is essentially the new version of Colonel Sanders from the third movie.
Yeah, the architect.
Right.
Well, the thing with I agree with you on Trinity. Like they never explain, except for what happens in the movie, like what she actually does, but they never explain. Okay, the analyst Neil Patrick Harris does give you the explanation of like why they're together all the time, but
Right.
there's nothing in the Neo just says we need to get Trinity because he sees her when he gets popped out of the pod again. He sees her at the next pod. We need
Right.
to get her. Why? I don't know. They never explain why they need to get her. They just need to get her. It's like
Right.
we need to give her enough money because she's in this movie, so we got to get her to get our money's worth out of having cast this actor.
That's one reason. So the analyst, I actually think Neil Patrick Harris did about as good a job as he could with the content that he was expected to deliver. His performance for he does a little bit of scenery chewing, but that's kind of okay. I think he's convincing for to be like almost like a serial killer. He's like a emotionless person pulling the strings in this. The problem is I don't buy and again, he's essentially a program in this movie, so I guess he doesn't really need a motivation, but I don't buy what he's selling as far as what he's doing feels like something that is so far. It feels like what he's doing with Trinity and Neo is so far, like he could have controlled it so much. It's like, why are we even going through these motions again? The other thing that's kind of a bummer, and again, he's good at doing this, but most of his story arc is really just him providing dialogue and providing long speeches to try to make some sense of this disaster of a movie.
Yeah, he's there to give exposition and to explain he's there to explain. So I don't know, maybe my attention span is nothing, but we've gone through all these characters. Like I think that we still don't even know what this movie's about.
No, we don't. And that's so I think at the heart of it, this movie's supposed to be a love story.
Sure.
About Trinity and Neo. And I actually kind of like the idea that that they're setting up the story that Trinity and Neo are so I guess this is the story. They're setting up this plot that Trinity and Neo are so drawn to each other that no matter what state of reality that they're in, whether they're in the Matrix, Zion, that's what's called, Zion.
Yeah.
The real world, whatever the case is, these two are just drawn together. I thought that's a pretty cool concept. The problem with it in this movie is there's like zero chemistry between them in this movie. And I'm not even trying to pull that as like it's a Keanu Reeves. Of course, there's no chemistry. He's Keanu Reeves. The first 3 movies, they have like a real like dire, it feels like a apocalypse is coming, end of the world, like but we still love each other. Like I bought their relationship really well in the first 3 movies. I bought that they were willing to do whatever for each other. This one, I'm not buying it, and it doesn't play off right at all. It just feels it feels like the stereotype of Keanu Reeves playing against. And again, Carrie Ann Moss is a fantastic actress, but it feels like he's essentially playing a girl version of Keanu Reeves.
Oh, that Trinity is, or Carrie
Yeah.
Ann Moss is in this movie like a female version of Neo, basically.
Yeah, like, but in not the good way. So
Yeah. And the whole thing. So, okay. So we have Neo, who's Thomas Anderson in The Matrix. We have Carrie Ann Moss, who plays Tiffany in the movie. I'm sorry, in The Matrix. And we have Neil Patrick Harris playing the analyst, aka Neo's psychiatrist, not psychologist, psychiatrist, who's prescribing him. We have the psychiatrist prescribing the blue pill to Neo, to Thomas Anderson, so that he doesn't start to trip out and remember that he's in the Matrix. And we have Carrie Ann Moss, who plays Tiffany, aka Trinity, who's in the movie, and they continually come close to each other, and they kind of recognize each other, but they don't really recognize each other until one of the designers of the game that he's developing introduces them, kind of like by happenstance, because you should talk to her, dude. You know, like trying to introduce them.
guy.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know. Do we really even need to talk about the plot anymore? It's not.
But that's half the problem with this damn movie.
It's hard to explain what it is.
It doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't. There's no linear plot because there's no threat. Like, this new version of Zion, like, there's never they never have any.
There's no conflict.
Reason to. Right. Like, everyone seems fine. The only person who's like depressed in this movie is Neo. And that's pretty much, honestly, like, everyone else is fine except Neo. He's the only person in this movie who's like, I hate my fucking life, and he keeps trying to kill himself and realizes he can't jump off a building.
Right. It's like the people that have their consciousness, that are living in their real bodies, want everybody else to be in the same state, that are under control of the machines. But there are other machines called sentience, right? Or sentience or whatever, like
something like that.
that work for the resistance.
T-1000s.
Well, but they're robots. They're like real robots.
Oh, you're talking about the like Dalek looking ones.
Yeah, the ones, they're all different sizes and they do different whatever. Like the ones that help Neo escape and the ones that help Trinity escape. And they're cool. You know, I guess in the 60 years, the robots and the people, the machines and the people, like the Terminator, but they lived all together in harmony. And then some machines, like the Sentinels and whatnot, want to go back, or whoever, I don't even know who it is, want to go back and they want to control humans, or, you know, use them as batteries, basically. But we don't know. There's no like big enemy. The enemy in this movie is the analyst, Neil Patrick Harris. And even Smith, who's a program, doesn't want to help the analyst. You find out later. So I just don't understand where's the conflict? Yeah, there's no conflict in it. I mean, some people are cool. Like, I guess the people that don't know any better, and they're just the battery. And the people who are free are like, no, you don't want to live like that. You want to live the way that we live. We have a society now. We have strawberries, and you should try the blueberries. Those are really hard to make. And then we have programs.
So is it just a big metaphor for America?
Maybe it's just a big metaphor for life.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, red pill, blue pill, you know.
You top all that off. So let's just pretend this movie is not supposed to be a story. It's just supposed to be because this is a Matrix movie that we're talking about. Like, you could give me a Matrix movie without a story, but make it look really pretty and show me a bunch of stuff on like an effects level, and I'd probably be like, well, the story's stupid, but it looks cool. I mean, I've certainly watched plenty of bad horror movies and thought that, you know. It fails at that too. Like, right off the bat, for some reason they're saying that they need to invent a new bullet time in the movie, which really pissed me off, because bullet time wasn't like a character like aspect in the first movie. It wasn't a special move that Neo had where Morpheus hit the D-pad and he pulled off bullet time. Bullet time was a technology they made up to be able to make the things in the movie happen. So why are we introducing it like it's some kind of character attribute in this movie?
Yeah, it's like the analyst can control the time, and the people in the Matrix can't control it. He can control it, and they move at slow motion, he moves at regular speed. So they use an
Right.
example of him shooting a bullet at Trinity, and he's, torturing Neo, or basically, teasing him or whatnot. And he goes over, and right before it's about to hit her in the temple, Neil Patrick Harris, the analyst, grabs the bullet out of the air because it's moving at a snail's pace, and Neo can't get there fast enough. He's just like, hey, look, I'm powerful. You think you have power. I have power here. You're nothing. And if I could kill you at any time, I could do whatever I want, and you can't do anything about it. But like you're saying, he literally calls it bullet time in the movie. Bullet time is something that we called it because it looked cool, and it's like a video game aspect. So again, that's kind of meta, hey, bullet time. But yeah, I don't. I hated the scene, the way those scenes with the quote unquote bullet time is filmed, just looks like a blurred frame rate. Like it's supposed to be like one character's moving at regular speed and everybody else is moving slow-mo, and it looks like garbage.
Well, and that's so much of this movie to me looks like an Apple presentation of the people at Apple making a fan film of The Matrix. Especially the scene where Morpheus and Neo have their little kung fu fight where they kind of redo the thing. I was like, this looks like I've seen this at an Apple. Like, I'm shocked it doesn't say shot on iPhone 13 or whatever in the bottom corner.
Yeah.
Because that looks exact. Like, did you do this entire movie in fucking Garage Studio or whatever the hell? I don't even know what program is in there for, like,
iMovie.
Yeah. Like, it looks like it's shot. Am I wrong?
No, I understand this movie was shot like on and off. They had a few months, pandemic happened. They decided to, pause production. They were going to scrap it at one point. They come back, but and it's probably shot on stages and whatnot, but it just looks bad.
Yeah. But I mean, I can't even use that as an excuse, because if you shot it, and then you have a couple month pause where you can take the scene and you're basically working on the effects and the editing on it, you're gonna look better. If instead of doing it on a shorter like time frame and trying to compress it to push a release date or something, if you're saying, well, we have an extra 4 months to work on this, shouldn't it in theory come out maybe a little better looking?
Yeah.
And it just goes for like other things in it too. Like, again, the wire work in this, like when someone gets thrown on this, it looks as bad as, like, there's movies where you can see people and they're on a wire because people, surprise, don't have the ability to fly. And then there's movies where it looks like you might as well see the crane that's pulling them because it looks that bad. And that's what this movie is. And then you kind of go even to like the opening scene in this. There's like almost a shot for shot remake of the hallway scene from Inception, except in Inception it looked good, and in this it looks like they just are spinning an iPhone around and calling it a Matrix movie. This is like right in the first scene when they're pulling out Morpheus.
Oh yeah, okay, I gotcha. I thought you meant the scene where it's the Trinity stand-in that does like the run on the wall. I'm like, I don't.
It's right after
when
that.
they're like ducking through the doorways and everything to get away from the agents.
Yeah, like right before they jump out that window, and
right.
So yeah, they're not just ripping off their own movie; they're also ripping off arguably a much better movie. So
yeah, I mean, I guess I could understand some of that stuff as like a play on, like we just kind of mentioned earlier about maybe the whole thing's like an allegory for, America or the world, or liberals versus conservatives, or Republicans versus Democrats or whatever. Maybe they're trying to kind of take the piss on that kind of thing, but it doesn't play very well. It plays badly. Like the Matrix movies are known, like you said earlier. You don't have to give me a story. If I watch a Matrix movie, I know there's going to be great action scenes. It's going to dive into this metaphysical philosophy, but it's going to be great action, and I'm going to be entertained, and I just feel like, and that's the thing with this, is that the action scenes are really, they try to go all out on them, but they feel really few and far between. Like what is there is okay for the most part, but it just,
and then you get to the third act, which is the third act is where it's like they tried to, it's like they kind of got to the third act and said, oh shit, this is a Matrix movie.
We need a highway scene in this. Let's do it now.
Yeah. I mean, the third act is just a mess. Like, I don't have a better way to describe it because for some reason, after the analyst does his thing and screams swarm a bunch of times,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I don't even remember how they got on this at this point, but Trinity's on another Ducati and Neo's on her back and they're running through the whatever city they're supposed to be in and they're trying to get away from, I guess, agents. I guess.
Well, so what happens is basically Neo says to the architect, the analyst, I want to keep calling the architect, listen, if you bring Tiffany, aka Trinity, here, and she doesn't want to go with me, you can plug me back into the Matrix forever.
Oh, right.
And if she says
Right.
that she wants to stay with me, then you have to let her come. And he's like, cool. So she comes in and she's, they do their thing. Coffee douchery abound because they are in a coffee shop. Like most of the scenes they're in the quote unquote when they're in the Matrix, and she decides that she doesn't want to go with him. She doesn't really know who he is. She's played his game. Oh, the character looked just like me. You could tell that because the characters in the video games generally at the era that I'm assuming that these games came out, because they're 3 games, it would take like probably 5 years per game. Oh, you played through the entire series and the character looked just like you? That's crazy because you don't even look like you. You look like some old lady that doesn't look like you. Okay, whatever. So the husband and the kids come in and she's going to leave. And Neo's, he's getting all weepy about it. And then she decides, I don't remember why she decides, but she decides she's going to go with them. And that's when the analyst turns everybody into the swarm.
Was it because she hates the name Tiffany or something like that?
Well, yeah, she mentions
that
she hated the name. She like awakens to that. Oh, I'm Trinity. I'm not Tiffany. I hated that name or whatever she says. And then the swarm come, and the swarm are basically like the Matrix's answer to zombies, like a hive mind zombie swarm.
I don't do a lot of gaming, but I remember when Call of Duty introduced the zombie mode. It's basically that.
Yeah. You can't hide from them. They're hive mind. They know where you are. They work as a crowd. They work as a team.
This third act, so yeah, they're basically just hauling ass through the city. You're seeing you see all your new characters come out and they're like, oh, this is bad. I'm like, it is? Because it hasn't been that bad yet. They act like they're gonna have to, get into this fight with all this whole swarm of programs, I guess. As they're hauling ass, I thought I would be entertained by this and what I'm about to say, but it just didn't work. You see people start jumping out of windows and trying to like kamikaze them from like high-rise apartment buildings and kind of splattering on the ground. Again, in theory, I could be entertained by that if it was done right. This just didn't work. It just kind of, at this point, I'm like 2 hours into this movie. I'm like, can we just finish this for God's sake? Like, can we get to whatever we're getting to? And it goes on like that for probably a good 5 minutes of them just driving around with bodies being thrown at them. Somehow they end up on the roof of a building, and now Neo is like force pushing bullets at a helicopter.
Yeah. A lot of the recycled imagery of the gun bullet casings falling on the ground, via either like assault rifles or the helicopters' guns. But yeah, Lana Wachowski loves this shot. This is like a favorite shot in this movie. They do it at least 5 or 6 times. Big climax of the scene is they're shooting the helicopters are shooting their guns at Neo and Trinity. Neo's able to deflect them. He's able to hold the shots, and I think he gets tired. And a helicopter comes up with a rocket. They shoot the rocket, and Trinity's the one that deflects the rocket into the other helicopter. It explodes, falls to the ground, and then they both run. They're like, we got to get out of this. They're going to do like a Matrix jump, the original Matrix, where Neo jumps from one building to the next. They jump together, and they're kind of floating in air, falling, and then all of a sudden, as they're falling on their way down, they hover, and it's Trinity's the one that's able to fly now, and she's holding Neo up. And he's like, I'm not doing this. Are you doing this? Yeah, jackass. You're the one that's dangling from someone's arm. You're not the one that's doing this.
They have so that happens, and then they go have their last little confrontation with the analyst. which really is. I do like that she punches his jaw right off his face. That was kind of entertaining.
Basically, them exerting their force to show, look, we're the ones that control this now.
But again, with no threat, with no conflict, other than him getting better efficiency out of them being pissed off. They said that at some point in the movie. I don't know if we touched on that.
Yeah, the analyst has discovered that the more times they've rebuilt this world over and over again, and they've found out that the more that they come in close contact without actually coming in contact with each other, the more they're able to power the Matrix, because their like life force or their energy that they give off becomes stronger when they're close, but when they get too close, it becomes destructive. And then they have to rebuild the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, that's essentially where this movie ends, is they go confront him and then they fly off. We get our last fuck you with the movie with this horrible cover of a Rage Against the Machine song that was in the original movie, which sounds bad. I don't know. My biggest problem with this movie is pretty simple, though. Well, this movie I never really got the feeling that this movie knows if it wants to be a reboot or a sequel. And the problem with that is it fails at both. If it was going to be a reboot, you could do it in so many different ways to tell the story of the Matrix. You could also, what would make more sense than being a reboot or a sequel, which is not what they went for in this. Why not just do a whole different spin-off? You have a concept of what the Matrix is and what this world is. You can make it pretty much whatever the hell you want, but they chose to kind of just give us, I'd say, of this 2.5 hour runtime, you probably have about an hour of just shots from the like literal. We took clips from the original movie.
I'd argue it's less. It's probably more like 20 to 30 minutes. But yeah, they recycle a lot of. They do a lot of the flashbacks to the same scenes. They'll show the same scene over and over again. There's a sequence where they actually play the scene on a screen that the characters are watching. Like they're basically watching a clip from the original movies.
Right. Yeah, they might as well have them going, hey, you remember this? But I'd be like, how much more interesting of a concept could this be if Neo was happy in the Matrix? Like, he's rich in this one, as opposed to the first one, where he's like just working in a cubicle. What if he liked being in the Matrix this time? What if he didn't want to leave? What if they had to actually go through and try to fight to get him out for some reason? You know, at least you would have a different conflict there. Like, there's nothing in this movie other than him being schlubby and kind of.
Yeah, I mean, he constantly knows that there's something up, that he's not enjoying his life, but he doesn't know what it is. But yeah, if they did it, they could go several different directions in this. And I read that there were like several concepts about like what they could do or what they were trying to do with the movie, and that, you know, the Wachowskis didn't have any interest in doing it. And then their parents, actually both their parents that passed away, they died, and that Lana was, you know, that made her reevaluate her life, and that she wanted to, write this movie. And it was characters that reassured her, because she was familiar with them. She was as familiar with these characters as she was with her parents. But I mean, you could have done so many things, or you could have just, you could have done something that nobody ever does and just let something lie.
Well, we gave up on that when they started making 2 and 3, honestly. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like the Matrix, like as a concept, how great would it be if we got like a, fully funded, like Netflix 10 episode run of some kind of show where we had a week in, week out, like short story Matrix type. Like, you look at how long they stretched out Stargate for. Like, you could easily make a show that would be entertaining out of the concept of the Matrix without any problem at all.
Well, I'm gonna blow your mind. They made something like that, and it was called Enter the Matrix, and it was a online role-playing game that when they were done with the Matrix movies, the Wachowskis said, yeah, hey, we're not going to make any more of these movies. Whatever happens in the game is now part of the story. It's canon in the universe. And nobody played it, and nobody cared, and they took it down. So why 17 years later, right? 17 years, do we need to have this movie?
I thought it was longer than that, but you might be right. You're probably right. I don't feel like we did need this movie. And really, I don't know. I've yet to talk to someone or seen anyone who said that they really enjoyed this movie. I'm sure that person's out there, but there's very few like positive things to take away. Like, again, if the only thing I can take away from this is I like the character Bugs, because she didn't really do much, but she didn't piss me off, and she kind of got in some fights. Okay,
That should be on the box. They should use that as a quote.
I like this character. She didn't do
But
much.
she didn't piss me off. John Farner, Dewey Pod Monster.
I would pay for that. But really, like, what other positive things are there in the, again, using 2 as a comparison, like, that's not a great movie, but you got that highway scene, you got some fun stuff they're kind of adding to the lore, you build on Trinity and Neo's relationship, so there's good things in that movie. Even though if you were to put them on like a grading scale, I'd probably, if the first one is an A, this one is a B minus, B at best for 2, where this one's a straight F. Like, I really have minimal things I can say that are redeeming about
I
this.
think some of the action is okay. I think that, like you were saying, the third act, like that's
Mhm.
pretty good. Like they build some tension. You almost feel like some of the characters, some of the supporting players are actually going to die, which I don't believe anybody actually does. That's the only real
Doesn't Smith die?
Does he?
I think he died in the recreation of the subway scene.
I thought he just walked away. He goes into the coffee shop and then he just leaves, and I don't think he comes back. He like saves their bacon at some point in that scene. I thought maybe. I mean, this is the funny thing. I watched this just 2 days ago. Like I care so little about what happened in this movie. I couldn't even tell you like some of the major, like, oh yeah, what happens to Smith? Doesn't he die? I don't. I get okay, but sure. You know, like that's my response because it's so forgettable.
I watched this the weekend it came out and thought, wow, that didn't do anything for me. I was like, you know what? Give it a month or 2. Maybe I'll go back to it, revisit it, and find something. Like, sometimes if you sit on a movie, you kind of come back to it and like, it's not that
Sure.
bad. Then we decided to do this as an episode, and part of me was like, I think my initial reaction was, oh shit, I gotta watch that movie again now. I went into it trying to like it. Like, I wanted to find things like, oh, this actually was pretty cool, or whatever, things to enjoy out of this movie. It just felt like fucking homework.
Yeah. The first time I saw this was the week or the day maybe it came out. I was really looking forward to watching it. But again, it was around the holidays and I think I had Christmas party. So I had to watch it in 2 separate, like, the first hour and a half. And then I went back and watched the last 2 hours. So I watched half an hour over again to kind of like, oh, what did I miss? Am I forgetting something? Like, what's going on? And I remember finding it, like, certain parts of it to be kind of humorous. Like they're very self-aware. Like you mentioned, the Warner Brothers part of it, the thing's called the Matrix, for God's sake. And then, but when I watched it, I came away watching it that first time, like, I didn't really enjoy this. Like, I don't know why Trinity, why they need to be joined together. All that stuff. Like, why do they go back for? Why do they rescue Neo? Like, what's the point? Who's the antagonist? And then again, like when we talked about doing this, I was like, okay, well, I have to watch it again. I was not looking forward to watching it again because I was kind of like, do I really need to watch it again? But when I sat down and I watched it very intently because there were so many questions that I had the first time I watched it that I wanted to watch it that second time and try to figure out for myself what, like, some of the answers to the questions that I had. And I just, I kind of flip-flopped on it. Like, I first started watching it and I was like, why am I doing this? I think I even texted you and said, like, I don't know if I hate myself enough to watch this. But as it went along,
I tried giving you an hour. I took pretty detailed notes.
You did. But I went along and I watched it and I thought, okay, this isn't that, like, I'm getting into this a little bit. Like, maybe not all my questions are answered, but it's at least entertaining. Like, the things that I found kind of humorous before, I didn't find it as many things humorous as I did the first time, but I found, like, the development where they're talking about the game development thing, that was kind of humorous. They talk about a lot of things. They talk about bullet time there, and they kind of talk through the meta of the audience, like maybe what the audience is thinking about the Matrix as a whole. And then by the time the end came, like you said, it's like, we just get this over with. Like, I appreciate all the complexity that they try to work in with, like, the robots that are helping, that the people and the sentients are working together. I appreciate the little magnet people that are made up of a bunch of ball bearings that, like, exist as programs in the real world, and that's kind of cool. But just, There were just so many more things that I flip flop. I flip flop in the movie. I don't like this. This is okay. To I don't like this anymore.
When you watch this a second, so when I watched it the first time, I came away less. I almost came away apathetic with it. I was kind of like, eh. When I watched this second time, I was pissed.
Yeah.
Like I was annoyed that I spent time watching this a second time.
Yeah.
And that's that's obviously not a good thing. Like you don't want to, make your viewer hate your movie more by going back and trying to get more of it. Is that the same thing that you got with it, or did you get like more accepting of it, I guess?
I think I got maybe a little bit more accepting of it, but just accepting that I didn't like it. I wasn't like upset. I mean, there were times when I was like, I could be watching a multitude of different things that I would enjoy much more than this. But at the end, I was just kind of like, meh. Like they totally set it up for another movie.
Oh yeah.
And like another trilogy.
Movies.
Yes, at least another trilogy. And it doesn't need it. Like it just doesn't need it. Like it doesn't. You can tell this is a movie that production was stopped in the middle, and that there were lots of maybe even rewrites during the pause in production. Like, oh, we don't, maybe we don't like where this is going. And I read a bunch of stuff about it. Like I'm reading stuff on Wikipedia about it. I'm reading the reception. I'm looking at IMDb. I'm looking at Rotten Tomatoes, looking at the thing. Am I the one, am I the asshole? Am I the outlier? Am I the one that doesn't like it? And it's pretty split. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes, the critics give it 63. The audience gives it 64. Right. So that's still a pretty large amount of people that, enjoy it. And IMDb's out of 10 rating is 5.7. So while not the worst movie, it seems like it's just kind of middling, like mediocre.
Yeah, I don't even think I could go as far as to call it mediocre at this point. Like, again, if you did any one of the things right that you could have done right, whether it's plot, whether it's relationships, character development, effects, you could have spent, 2 hours blowing stuff up and just have like Neo walking away slowly like it's an 80s action movie, and I might have been okay with that.
Sure.
None of that is what you get. This, I don't know. I'm actually surprised to hear that it got 64 on Rotten Tomatoes. Like,
and the critics and the audience are so close too.
Yeah, I take critics, I take with a grain of salt. Like I'm sure like anyone, I have a couple that I like and that I kind of want their opinion, but much past that, I'm kind of don't really care.
Yeah.
You look for someone to validate your opinion,
sure,
not to challenge it, right?
Of course.
So, but I don't know. I really was trying, like, in all the notes, I think I told you I had at one point 4.5 pages of notes for this movie. I managed to trim it down because otherwise we'd be going on for 2.5 hours of me just yelling about this movie.
Yeah, I think when we go longer than the runtime of the movie, we have some issues we need to edit a little bit, but yeah.
That's a rule of the show, is that we don't go over the runtime of the movie.
We have at least another hour and a half to go.
Yeah, we don't need to go that long. I really tried to find some positives in this because I don't like when I was writing beer reviews, I never liked writing from a point of just negativity and just trying to bash on something. I don't think that really helps anything. Yeah. I really had a hard time finding anything positive to say about this other than like, I like this one new character kind of because she doesn't annoy me. That's really the only thing I can say with it at this point. I mean, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe if I did watch it a third time, I would change my mind. I have no intention on doing that. So I don't know. We'll see. But it really is a movie that it's disappointing that a franchise that I did hold in pretty high esteem. I wouldn't say it was like my favorite franchise by any stretch, but it was definitely a fun series of movies. This just fell flat in every conceivable way.
Yeah, and I think for me, like I try not to get caught up in hype of anything. Like I don't even watch movie trailers anymore. If a movie comes out that I'm really interested in, I'll wait till it comes out. If I can catch it, I'll watch it. If I have to watch it after it's already been out of theaters, I'll try to avoid things about it just to get my own perspective, an untainted opinion of it. And this movie was one of those things. Like I said, I have fond memories of the first movie, especially the second and third movie. Have fond memories about it. When I heard that this was finally coming out, because it had been talked about forever. When I heard it was finally coming out, I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to watch a trailer for it, but when it comes out, it'll be on HBO Max. I have HBO Max. I'll watch the movie when it comes out. And I just was kind of like, oh, like this is what we waited for, when I first saw it. And when I watched it again, it was kind of like, I already built that opinion, giving it a
Right.
second chance. And I don't like to be negative about things. I like to be, give criticism, constructive criticism. And this just isn't a movie I'd watch again. I was going to ask you, are we going to like give personal ratings on these movies? Or are we just going to let our actions speak, our words speak for those ratings?
I think we need to figure that out, but I don't think it's going to be in this episode. But I do like the idea of putting some kind of rating on it.
Just give it a 1 out of 1,000.
4.
4 out of 1,000.
That's probably not that bad.
I mean, if you're going to do it out of 1,000, I'd at least give it a 400 or something. I mean, it's not that bad. It's not that good.
I'd probably say I think when I rated it, I gave it a 4. So
400 out of 1,000.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I can't. I mean, again, if you really love this world and this franchise, you probably should watch it, because I very well could be wrong. Obviously, there's people that like it enough to give it 6s, so there's something there.
Yeah, if the average is 60 whatever percent, someone had to say it was 100.
Right. So I mean, if you like this franchise, yeah. I mean, again, you're talking to someone who's a fan of Friday the 13th and Halloween movies, and those franchises both have their share of dog shit movies right in the middle of their runs, and sometimes at the end of the all over the place. If you like a franchise, you should watch it anyway, because at least you know for yourself if you care about this movie or not, and you can say you've seen it. Would I go out and buy this movie? Like, would I want to put it on my shelf? God, no. Like, I wouldn't want to, I if I could somehow get a refund from my HBO Max for, whatever portion of that went to this movie, I'd probably ask for it back if I could. But there's really no redeeming quality for me to say this is recommendable, other than if you're a fan of this franchise, in which I'd say go see what happens in the story, but don't get your hopes up.
Yeah, I looked in just to make sure to see if this was even sold as a physical copy. It is.
It is. Yeah, I saw it today at the store.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd give this maybe like, I don't know, 7 hot dogs out of 21 banana peels. I don't really, I think it's really just for completionists. Like if you're just really into the Matrix and you're wearing your, trail duster coat, and you're growing your hair out like Keanu, wearing your, answering your Nokia, I don't know, 5120 model phone, then you'd probably want to see this, but I think for most it's just maybe even good just background, something to have on in the background so you don't, your tinnitus doesn't bother you all day. But other than that, I don't really see, just watch the first 3 movies again if you're really that into it.
Even going into some of the weird, like the anime one, which I got confused by that series too, but even that was better, or had better moments than this.
Well, the Animatrix, we were so starved for Matrix content at that point. I mean, some of those stories were pretty decent, and they have really interesting concepts, and they're made by some animators that are just world class. But yeah, I mean, I would watch the Animatrix until my eyes fell out of my head before I'd want to watch this movie again. Matrix Resurrections is not an awful movie. If you want to see it one time so you can kind of see what all the fuss is about, that'd be worth it. This wouldn't be a movie I'd watch 2 or 3 times.
But yeah, I don't know. This one, like I said, it's a hard one to recommend. I really don't see where it fits in pretty much anything. It's not even bad on like the get some buddies together and have a bunch of beers and make fun of it bad.
Right.
It's just
bad.
Yeah. But we will be back next week with more shenanigans. I think we're gonna mix it up next week and do something other than a movie, but we'll figure that out pretty shortly here. Do you got anything to add before we sign off?
Yeah, if we have any hate mail to send to us, we have an email address they can send those hate mails to. What's that email address, John?
That would be DeweyPodmonster@gmail.com. It's on top of all our socials now. You can also make sure to download this and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, or you can look at us on Anchor FM. There is links to everything on there. Of course, subscribe to, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. And of course, make sure you follow Draft Therapy as well. That's going to get you more beer information than anything that we do. All right. Well, Sean, I'll talk to you next week and we'll pick up from there. We'll catch something else between then and enjoy your week.
All right. Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody, for listening. See you next week.